Hey Karen, this is my submission for option one of the inquiry project. I chose to interview an old friend of mine who is now a math teacher for seventh and eighth grade at a middle school in Fort Worth, Texas, where I grew up. It was a really interesting conversation. I really valued the opportunity to get to connect with my old friend on a professional level. And I'm looking forward to reporting to you about how the interview went and what I found noteworthy. So he the first question I asked him was what kind of professional preparation has he had for the meeting the needs of English language learners. And interestingly, he had almost no training whatsoever when he started about 5 years ago. He did a short teacher certification program. I think it took him 3 or 4 months, but maybe 3 months online, and then he was in the classroom. So they obviously have a much easier way to get into to teaching in Texas than they do in Oregon, where you have to have a master's degree. So he really didn't get much training at that point. However, they have PLC meetings, or professional learning community meetings, every month, and or every week, I believe. And about once or twice a month, they will talk about how to scaffold and support English language learners in their classrooms. How does he know which students are in his classes are ELLs? Well, he has a system, the attendance system designates who the English language learners are. And also he makes a point of getting to know his students, and that means getting to know them academically and getting to know them language-wise as well. The most common language in his classes is Spanish. The middle school where he teaches, he said, is 90 to 95% Hispanic. And it's on the north side of Fort Worth, which is, it's almost like Little Mexico. It's everything's in Spanish. Seemingly, most people are Mexican or Hispanic. So I didn't find that surprising at all. He hasn't really seen too many other languages. He says every once in a while he'll get like a kid who speaks Arabic or Swahili, but the way they set up their school system there is they have a newcomer academy for Fort Worth Independent School District where brand new students come, and it's an actual separate school for them. And then after a year, I think a year or so, they get transferred to regular middle school. And at his middle school, they have, what did he call it? I'm forgetting the name, but it's like a school within a school where the focus is on English language learning, but they're also teaching core subjects as well. And then those kids will do electives with their peers, their native speaking peers. So the kids that he has in his classroom that are ELLs typically are intermediate to advanced level speakers. He says he's had a couple beginning level speakers here and there in his 5 years, but for the most part, they can speak pretty well, although they do still need support with the academics. And that's one thing he stressed, is that sometimes his kids can communicate with their friends just fine. They can TikTok and Instagram, no problem. But then when it comes to actually using academic language, they are, that's where they struggle. And that's where they need the support. So he says he hasn't seen much of a change in over the years with regard to English language learners in his classroom. It's only been 5 years. One interesting thing he did note is that in Texas, they have to take a test called the TELPAS, TELPAS, and the kids do. And I should specify, English language learners have to take that test. And the test is scored on 1 to 4, 1 being not proficient, 4 being totally proficient in English. And schools are actually rated on, that's one of the criteria on which they're rated. Also, there's other standardized test scores and things of that nature that end up going into a school's rating. And TELPAS, the exit rate, is one of those. So the administration of this school really pushes for focus on increasing TELPAS scores so they can exit more kids out of the program. What changes has he seen over the years with regard to expectations for him as a content teacher? He really has, over the last few years, tried to increase the amount that his students write. Now, he's a math teacher, and I know that you were a math teacher as well. He really tries to focus on incorporating literacy as part of his professional practice. And in addition to encouraging writing and requiring writing, he also requires speaking and wants kids to really get experience and use their oral language skills as well as their written language skills in the context of mathematics. So what changes has he seen over the years with regard to expectations for him as a content teacher? As I said, he has really been trying to have students write a lot and make sure they speak. One thing he's complained about is that sometimes the kids won't take the TELPAS test seriously, which can make him look bad and make the school look bad. Where, in class, they'll do great. They'll speak English, they'll be getting it academically, and then it comes time to take the test, and they don't see the importance of trying. And then they end up failing the TELPAS test, not realizing that they're actually hurting themselves because they can't be exited from the program. So that was a gripe he had about that. But, that's working with middle schoolers. Middle schoolers, behavior is one of the issues that you have to deal with regardless of whether or not they're English speakers or what English proficiency level they're at. And that's one major thing in managing a classroom. One of the questions asks about does he try to pair same language students or keep them apart? Well, he tries to pair them together. So he doesn't like to put a super proficient or native speaker with someone who is at a low proficiency of English because the high proficiency student will tend to carry the team, so to speak, and kind of do all the work while the other kid is either intimidated and doesn't, or just is happy to let the other kid do the work. So he likes to pair, a beginning with an intermediate or beginning intermediate with another intermediate, somewhere around the same level if possible. And he said that pairing intermediate level students with beginner level students is actually helpful for the intermediate students because they're required to explain and really, they have to kind of take responsibility for the learning of their partner, and which requires them to use their English and really practice and get better at that. And it also helps them solidify their understanding of the content, the academic content. That said, sometimes there are behavioral issues, and he has to pair people up based on behaviors because some kids just can't work with one another. And that's a limitation within which all middle school teachers have to work. So how does he handle family communication with ELLs? Well, sometimes he has students call and translate, and I expressed some reservations about that because, if he's calling, it may not be about something good. He said, if he thinks that they're going to lie, he'll do it in front of a Spanish-speaking staff member. Sometimes he can get siblings to call their parents, and he knows that they will tell the truth because siblings love getting their siblings in trouble. He'll also, he's prepared statements before or had a Spanish speaker prepare a statement for him. He calls and in the statement in Spanish will say something to the effect of, "Hi, I'm Mr. So-and-so. I don't speak Spanish. I'm reading this. I want you to know that you can contact me about anything and I want to let you know about what happened today. If you have any questions, please call the school and they will get a translator for me. I'd love to be in contact with you. And then sometimes he will just have a translator he'll go through a translator through the school. His best approach for providing differentiation and accommodations, he makes sure to give them both oral and visual accommodation. He likes to provide oral and visual supports and academic content. So, for example, what I mean by that is if there's a word problem, he will give them the word problem on paper so they can read it. Then he will read it out loud to them, and he might even ask them to read it themselves. And there are different variations on that he can do, but the point is that he wants them to use their English and interact with the content in as many ways as possible. His advice for new teachers as they consider work with ELLs is that, in his opinion, the biggest hurdle is family contact. Sometimes it's really hard if you don't speak the language of the ELLs to be in contact with the family, which can result in some in behavioral problems, or it makes it more difficult to deal with those behavioral problems. Also, of academic vocabulary, as I mentioned, that's a big struggle, and he provides word banks and word walls, sentence frames, different scaffolds of that nature. Makes sure to provide more attention to them because he knows that they may have more difficulty understanding academic vocabulary. So the biggest thing he said is to be aware of what your students' abilities are and where they are both academically and linguistically, and to try to meet them where they are. That resonated a lot with me. I really liked that. I wasn't too surprised by anything that he said in this interview. It kind of went the way I expected it to. And I'm glad to see that my friend is supporting ELLs and really takes a critical lens to his practice. It's really fun to have grown up and chosen the same career path, and we would have never expected that growing up. So I hope that this satisfies the requirements. I hope you found it interesting. Stay safe, and I will see you in class.